Thank you for tuning in to the Into the Classroom series produced by Mental Health California, sponsored by Blue Shield of California's Blue Sky Initiative.
Hello. Welcome to our Into the Classroom session, which is a student mental health awareness multimedia series produced by Mental Health of California. My name is Conrad Crump, aka Coach Crump, and I'm here to have a wonderful discussion with some awesome people around the topic of dealing with family drama. Now, too many students who are still developing and figuring out life often deal with family drama, and often at the worst of times. You know, they say save the drama for your mama, but what happens when your mama is the source of the drama? So today's conversation will dive into some of those family dynamics and how family drama takes a toll on our youth and how our youth can cope. We've got some amazing people lined up, part of our discussion today. Our clinician, Ali Garza, is a licensed clinical social worker with a master's in social work and expertise in youth suicide prevention, crisis intervention, and supporting parents and family members, among many other specialties. Welcome, Ali.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Yes, and we also have a couple of our youth guests that will be joining us as well. One of which is a student at Mira Loma High School, Erica Pham.
Hi, it's good to be here. Thank you for having me.
Hi there. Great. So we'll go ahead and jump in. I believe we have some other students that are going to be joining us as well momentarily. But right now, we're going to just have some insights into, what family drama can have and the effect it can have on youth. And I'd really like to touch base with you, Ali, and see if you can kind of shed some light on that.
Yeah, I think I like the term drama because it's very broad, and I think it can encompass a lot. So whether that's family conflict, tension, maybe there's a crisis in the family, I think that family drama is inevitable. If there's a perfect family out there that doesn't have any drama, I haven't met them yet. It's certainly not mine. And I think that these situations that come up in families between kids and parents, and maybe sibling to sibling are more so opportunities to figure out how you can navigate those situations together. I think some of the biggest challenges that come up are when we're either unwilling to address trauma and we maybe have more of the people pleasing tendencies, or if our route of addressing drama is more escalated or hostile. So finding that middle ground of how can we work together, how can we communicate between parents and vice versa with teens, to be able to navigate those situations and to actually strengthen the bond rather than have the drama tear us apart. So
Wonderful. Thanks for that feedback. I believe we also have a couple of other of our youth participants here today. I'd like to welcome in Joel Swazo, who's a student at Los Angeles City College. How you doing, Joel? Good to see you.
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me.
Wonderful. And I also believe we have Jaden Turner, who is a student at Sacramento State University. Hey
Hi,
there.
how's it going?
Good to see you. So
Good,
yeah,
good.
let's get into it. We've had a little bit of some insight from Ali, giving us, the types of drama. But just by a show of hands, I'd like to ask each of you if any of you have dealt with or is dealing with family drama. See, everyone's hand went up. And clearly, we are not alone. It is something that happens within families. And so let's go ahead and dig a little deeper with our slide presentation. So we're going to go ahead and delve into family dynamics. And we understand that family dynamics can be challenging. So we want to go ahead and just ask some of the folks that are on our call today if you all might be able to share some of those family dynamics and some of the things that you might have experience, or some of the things that some youth might experience as it relates to those challenges with family dynamics. So I'll go ahead and ask Erica if you'd like to comment on how those challenges are within families.
I think family dynamics can be different within each family. So, for example, it could be parents fighting or just various, because every family is different. So, I think that it's a unique situation for every single family, and it definitely has an impact on how we navigate our education as well, and how we do in school, and how our mental health is. And I think it's really important that there are resources and just different ways to cope with that, and to discuss it with others, or have any other like methods to cope with it.
Much appreciated. And I heard you talk about resources. Ali, could you go ahead and chime in on what some of those resources might look like?
Yeah, I mean, there's a wide variety of ways that either parents can seek education or resources about informing themselves about mental illness or things to be on the lookout for. One of the things I always recommend for parents who have kids who have any sort of anxiety disorder or OCD is this training called SPACE, that stands for Supportive Parenting for Anxious Childhood Emotions, that talks about just how to handle when your child who has an anxiety disorder or OCD, what to do in situations in which those feelings are really escalated and you kind of feel like, what do we do next? Other things that I'd recommend are NAMI, to connect with other parents and get support. And I think there's also obviously family therapy, to really meet with someone that specializes in navigating those dynamics and being able to make sure that there's kind of an even playing field, to being able to talk through different situations that might be coming up in a family system.
Very good. Very good. All right, let's go ahead and move on. Again, there's a lot to cover, and I'm sure that we could talk about this all day. But let's talk about some of the different types of family drama. We've got sibling rivalry, differences in communication. Let me ask you, Jaden, might you be able to elaborate on some of the different types of family drama that some of our youth go through and how that might have an effect on them?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in a pretty big household, so it was mostly boy-dominated household. So I was one of seven boys in the household in total. And yeah, sibling rivalries can get pretty heated sometimes, especially like when you have a bunch of young males. They get very, physical with one another. From my personal experience, but I mean, yeah, I could take on plenty different forms, from sibling rivalry, with young kids, to your mom and your aunt are fighting, your aunt and your uncle, like that kind of stuff doesn't really go away as they grow up usually, which is unfortunate. But it can come from that. It can come from you having an argument with your mom, your dad, or your guardian of whatever nature.
Yeah, no, that's very true. And I too come from an all boy household, and things did get physical, wrestling, and all the things that happen. So, yeah, I appreciate that. Let me ask you, Joel, when it comes to communication breakdown, would you care to elaborate on what that might look like for some of our young people?
Yeah, definitely. So with my own experiences within my family, having drama and stuff, I think it's always good to talk and try to verbally communicate it. Sometimes, people who are older than us or younger than us might not fully understand where we're coming from, or situations that we've been through in the past. So just explaining that and being very expressive, and maybe bringing in like a third party to, in case things get like intense or like a super crazy conflict where it gets physical, it would be nice to have someone there, or, talking to a therapist, or overall just, being very verbal, not so much as of physically having altercations that are can be problematic. So.
Yeah, and I see you nodding your head as well, Erica. Did you have something that you'd like to add to that?
I think also in a lot of different cultures, like families have different ways of expressing um, any problems or any just anything they want to bring to attention. So I think doing that like family dynamic and different like generations. Like I grew up in a multi-generational household, so it's kind of difficult like when to like go across the boundaries to like make something clear to your elders and stuff like that. I think that is definitely differs between each household, and we should have a lot of resources and education on how to deal with that as well.
Awesome. No, thanks for that. And that actually kind of segues into our next slide, which talks about generational differences as well as differing expectations. And I'd like to hear from Ali if you could maybe talk about those impacts that differences in expectations as well as generational differences might have on our youth.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's such a hot topic these days as far as bridging the gap between whether it's Gen Z and the boomers or whatever it may be. And that's why I've loved doing the work that I've done with youth, is because I like to get families together and kind of clarify that, like, what we all want is for your child to be happy and for the family system to be happy, right? As far as what's causing the disruption, that's kind of where things can get a little more complicated, where, and I agree 100% that, technology and all these things that the older generations didn't deal with when they were youth. I feel like those things are quickly pointed to as the source of all issues. I think it's a piece of the puzzle. Absolutely. The research backs that's tech, social media is not necessarily helpful for youth mental health. And I think that's where we kind of had to tease apart, like, one generation saying this is the problem, it's the phones, the younger generation saying, no, it's not the phone, it's this, and being able to kind of zoom out and look at all the different pieces and figure out how we can kind of bridge that gap of like, and what are we going to do next? Can we not decide that it's one of these things versus the other, but rather kind of take a more big picture approach? So.
Yeah, no, I hear you, and that's absolutely right. Very good. I often understand that with these differences in expectations, whether they be generational or what have you, or communication breakdown, there's a lot of emotions that are attached, a lot of feelings that can arise within these situations. And I'd like to go on into our next slide where we're kind of talking about understanding some of those emotions. Let me ask Erica, might you be able to elaborate on what some of those emotions that family drama can bring upon our youth?
Yeah, so I definitely think the ones on the slide, hurt, sadness, anger, frustration, those are definitely ones that come to mind. I think all these emotions also cause us an inability to kind of focus. So when we're talking about like the classroom, it's harder for students to focus with all these emotions going on, because I think we all just have like one family. So it's kind of like, it's not like drama with friends where you can like replace it or avoid it, but family is like always something that we go back to. So I think it's kind of challenging when dealing with these emotions and everything because they really hit home and stuff.
Very true. Very true. And let me ask you, Jaden, would you like to jump in on that as well?
Yeah, so like that kind of like the like Erica was talking about like the hurt and sadness and the anger, frustration. Like when you're home, like you can't really avoid it. Like you have to deal with your family, unfortunately, for like the household you're in. And getting back to like the generational differences, like for me personally in my household, my father who raised me didn't really understand like depression, anxiety, this kind of stuff. So it kind of put a strain on like family relationships as like me and my siblings were growing up. Like now that we're a little older, it's he's come to terms with it and understands it a lot more. But it was difficult for him to see those kind of things and understand that like, oh, like anxiety and depression are a real thing.
Mm-hmm. Oh, very good. Yeah, I wanted to check in with Ali, our clinician on the call. It's something that's very important and something to really highlight as it relates to understanding these emotions and how it might have an impact on students in the classroom, which is something that Erica alluded to. Might you be able to talk to us a little bit about that, Ali?
Yeah, I think as much, I think different students have different stances on school. I think especially amidst the pandemic, it became very clear that for a lot of students, like school was their safe space. It's where they had the adults that they trusted, and home was not so much that space. And then there's kids on the other end of the spectrum who, when they no longer had to go to school and it was telehealth, that was a huge relief for them because of emotions or stressors that came from there. I think that school is a great opportunity to be able to get people connected to resources and get them connected to supports. And I think just the reaction, how they present in the classroom is just so different based on a bunch of different factors, such as, maybe what diagnoses they have going on, what's going on at home. But yeah, kind of different reactions or different behaviors can pop up that would take a lot more kind of digging to figure out where they might be coming from.
Yeah, no, that's very good. And that's kind of segueing into the next slide, which actually talks about validating those feelings, validating those emotions, understanding that all of your emotions are valid. That's what makes you human, is the fact that you have them. So I totally agree with what you just said, Ali, and I'd love to get some feedback. Jaden, might you be able to give us a little bit of feedback on validating emotions?
Yeah. So like I was saying before, like growing up in a household where like my parents didn't really understand like those kind of emotions. It's like, oh, like, I'm not doing too hot lately. Like I'm kind of sad, and trying to express those emotions. Like it's hard enough to already be able to express them, but then to have them kind of fall upon deaf ears sometimes is even worse, because you're like, hey, I need help trying to get this feeling out, and then your parents don't even understand or don't even think what you're saying is real. It's like, oh, just if you're sad, just get over it. Like, you don't have a reason to be sad. You have a roof over your head, you have food on the table. And that's not always the case in some instances where some households don't have food on the table or a roof over their head. And growing up in those kind of instances as well, it really drives it home, where it's like you kind of just need to be okay with what you have, and reach out to other sources if possible, and try to talk it out.
Yeah, no, very good. And I see you nodding your head, Ali. Did you want to chime in there?
Yeah, I think it's super important to highlight to parents that validating emotions doesn't necessarily mean validating situations, circumstances. I think there's plenty of situations in which, especially I think about the world of anxiety, in which maybe a child is really anxious or a teen's really anxious about a situation, and they go to their parents, and their parents might have the kind of knee-jerk reaction and be like, oh no, you don't need to worry about that, like out of love and care for them. But actually, similarly to what Jaden said, when we like dismiss those feelings or thoughts, even out of a place of love, like, oh, I think all my classmates hate me. And your parent says, oh, no, they don't. That's actually like shutting down a connection opportunity, rather than what may be more helpful is taking the approach of, wow, that's really hard to feel that way. You don't have to agree. In fact, you probably don't, right? As a parent, agree that like everyone hates them in their class, but rather it's an opportunity to kind of lean in rather than to shut it down by exploring the emotions that are coming up. So,
No, that's very good. And actually, I appreciate you saying that, because I believe that is in a nutshell, a part and parcel of effective communication. Being able to have the ways in which we communicate, whether with our parents or whether with, our teachers, all of that is a way in which, and ways in which they communicate with us as well. So I think all of that is important, just because it creates that, just an environment of understanding. Like you said, I'm not validating the situation, but I am validating the emotion, which is something that's absolutely spot on. When it comes to effective communication, we know that there are different forms of effective communication. And moving on to our next slide is something that we kind of want to delve into a bit here as well. When it comes to that, I'd like to ask Joel, we've got active listening as well as clear expression. What are some of the ways in which students as well as parents might be able to effectively communicate with one another?
One way that I think that they can effectively communicate is maybe, talking to whoever's closest to you, maybe going to your friends first about a certain situation, or, just getting your emotions validated, like what we were talking about before in the previous slide. You can also have like a third person in it, like I had explained earlier with a therapist, just to intervene. And overall, what I like is active listening, because the best way that you can understand someone is by listening and having that thought process, maybe sleeping on it overnight, or just thinking about it, learning about your emotions, and overall just speaking about it, talking full force conversation. So
Very good. Very good. And clear expression. I think that's a part of it, kind of what you mentioned there as well, Joel. Let's go ahead and move on to our next slide. Again, there's a lot to talk about, but we don't have all of the time. So let's try to have some conversation about setting boundaries as it relates to personal space, timing, et cetera, et cetera. Erica, could you go ahead and talk to us a little bit about setting boundaries and what that might mean?
Yeah, so typically, or just in general, families are usually, if they are in like the same household. So I think it's kind of important to just have your space, have your room, be able to like step outside so we're not all in the same room at once if there's a bunch of tension. I think that's really important. And also timing. It's important to remember that I feel like each person in a family is going through different things at the same time. Like, yes, we are all one family, but individually, like I go to school, my parents have work, my brother has sports, my brother has school, different stuff like that. And I think it's important to, like, from the last side, actively listen to each other, what's going on, before like jumping to conclusions or making all sort of assumptions and having more and more pile on to like to make it be like unnecessary kind of.
Sure. Okay, awesome. And how about you, Jaden? Did you want to jump in there?
Yeah, so having like that personal space, in some households can be very difficult. Like like if you share a room with a sibling, right, and maybe you guys don't have the closest relationship, it's very hard to like have that personal space. Like you kind of sometimes you feel like you can't go anywhere where you feel comfortable with yourself and with your feelings, and like trying to get out of that situation, and maybe it's not an option for you, if you live in a bad community or something like that. So that can really play a big effect on how you handle your emotions and what you do. And if you have somebody who you do feel safe with, or an area you do feel safe with, that can really benefit you in the long run, more often than not.
Very good. And let me ask you, Joel, let's talk about timing. Can you elaborate on that when it comes to setting boundaries?
yeah, so for timing, I think it's like super important, especially for your mental health. Sometimes you got to get out, you got to go be in nature, you got to, maybe practice mindfulness, maybe, go and meditate for a little bit, just so you can, get your head on straight. And, maybe if those voices are talking in your head, then you can quiet them down, just so you can focus, lock in, and focus on your studies, going to school, and just overall having good mental health. So yeah.
Very good. And I understand that, students are dealing with a lot, not just the family things, but also requirements and responsibilities from school. So with that being said, let me ask Allie, because, she's our licensed clinician here. We want to talk about support and seeking support when we are dealing with family drama. And can you maybe talk to us about that, Allie?
Yeah, there's a lot of different routes that you can take. School is obviously a huge resource. I know we talked during the last podcast about all the different things that have been woven into schools that were not the case when I was in high school, whether it's, in school therapy, counselors, psychiatry, psychologists. So more likely than not, if you went to your school counselor, they'd be able to connect you with resources and specialty resources for whatever the situation is, if it's family therapy or a specific modality of treatment that you need for mental illness or getting assessed. So school's always a great spot to start. Otherwise, certain counties will have like different walk-in centers for mental health. NAMI, again, is a good county by county resource. And yeah, there's a kind of a slew of things, and there's always in the crisis world 988 now. And another program that I used to work for was called Youthline, and they're a crisis line that's peer-to-peer support every day, I believe from 5 p.m. till 9. So that's another number that you could look up to seek support.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. And just by a show of hands, because I know our time is running close, let me ask our youth participants, do you all have resources or support at your school that you might be able to lean on if need be? Wonderful. Very reassuring to know that there is a place to go. And with that, hopefully, you will be able to find the empathy and the understanding there in that space where you can have someone to talk to. I'd like to really quickly ask maybe just two of our participants. I'll go with Erica and Jaden, if you can talk to us about empathy and understanding. And Erica, you can go ahead and take it away.
Yeah, I think empathy and understanding are really important when just interacting with other people on a daily basis, not just with family drama, with like anything going on. Going back to what we said about school resources, I think it's really cool how schools now, after COVID and just when I joined high school and everything, my counselors are super supportive. My teachers are also super supportive. They're always down to have a conversation about literally anything. I think it's super cool because they love working with kids and they all of our elders were once teenagers too, so I think it's important that we understand that and they understand us. So it's like that.
Very good. And Jaden?
Standing, like Erica was saying, like just you want to go into the world trying to be empathetic to as many people as you can, like don't take anything at like face value and like assume the worst with people. And that's a very difficult thing for people to do, especially these days. I feel like when everyone's so on edge, everyone's so scared, but having that understanding of your emotions better and how other people's emotions affect them can really play a big role in making those
Yeah.
connections and getting more support and more connections and relationships overall as a whole.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that. Yeah, the empathy and understanding is a huge piece that, like you said, Erica, not just with family drama, but in all of our spaces and places that we may find ourselves, it's very important to empathize with our fellow human and try to gain a level of understanding. Very good. I'm going to go ahead and go on to our next slide as it relates to active listening. So let me ask you, Joel, when it comes to active listening, can you talk to us briefly about how that can impact, some of the family drama and maybe even break it down and hopefully find ways to effectively communicate?
Yeah, I would love to jump in. Actively listening is super important, just so you can understand where the person is coming from. Also, to learn how to articulate your feelings. Maybe someone older than you or younger than you knows how to articulate their feelings better than you do. So, with you actively listening, you gain that characteristic or that knowledge of learning how to express yourself to one another, whether you're a family member, whether you're having problems with coworkers or other people in the classrooms, your teammates, your friends, anybody overall. So I think actively listening goes into one of the major components is also being able to articulate yourself.
Awesome. And let's move on to our next slide. Talking about self-care breaks. Ali, can you talk to us briefly about self-care?
Yeah, I think this can kind of go hand in hand with also what we were talking about with boundaries. I think that concept has kind of gotten twisted over time, and that boundaries aren't a list of rules that we have for other people, but rather how we manage access that other people have to us. And I think self-care can be a great way to weave that in when we're feeling yeah, as it says, when the emotions are escalating or we feel like we're in an unproductive conversation, figuring out ways that you can say, hey, this is really important. We're going to come back to this conversation and we're going to take a time out. We're going to take a break and I'm going to go do whatever it may be, whether it's walking out in nature or reading or listening to music, so that you can come back as like a more true and present version of yourself. So.
Wonderful. No, very good. All of these are great ways in which we can find self-care and help ourselves, when it comes to family drama. I want to take the time to personally thank each and every one of you. Thank you, Erica. Thank you, Joel. Thank you, Jaden. And thank you, Ali, just for being who you are, and all of you for your great words and contributions. And also, we want to thank Mental Health of California, as well as Blue Shield of California, just for everything and the work that they do to create, spaces like this where we can talk about these things with our youth. So once again, I'm Conrad Crump, aka Coach Crump. Thank you all for your time, and we'll see you again.